all the fantastic books and where to find them. So we're at Waterstones Piccadilly for the launch of Here at the Fall by Alwyn Hamilton. We went to the Traitor to the Throne event last year. You might have seen the video. If not, I'll put a link in the description below and you can put that if you want to. We played some chess, so that was good. And now we're just drinking hot chocolate, although mine is really, really hot. And I think I'm the only one with a drink actually. Consider I don't drink hot drinks, but it's the best hot chocolate ever, but it's still really, really hot. Okay, so I'll film throughout the talk as well, so you'll see some of the bits there. And until then, I think I'm going to try my hot chocolate.
I am Samantha Shannon. I'm the author of the Bone Season series and The Priory of the Orange Tree, but I'm not here to talk about my own books today. I'm here to talk about the books by the lovely lady on my right. In 2016, she took us on a gunslinging breakneck adventure on a train and a fiery horse and on foot across the desert nation of Maraji. In 2017, she took us into the secretive labyrinth of the Sultan's harem. And in 2018, she's taking us on our final epic journey across the desert. So please give a big hand to Alwyn Hamilton. Before we begin, did anyone come to last night as well? Oh my god!
No, they're favourite people.
Anyone else? Okay, we were just checking because this was literally like
because we might repeat ourselves. We discussed like wearing the same outfit as we wore yesterday, but then we thought that might create a glitch in the matrix, so we decided not to. We talked about it sort of like being kind of Groundhog Day, and then I realized that Samantha's never seen Groundhog Day, which is just shocking.
I know what it's about.
And I see some young people whispering to each other, I haven't either. So you should.
Because that makes me feel young though, so I'm happy with that.
It's next week, it's the 2nd of February, that's all I'm saying. It's a great time to watch, it's a great movie. Carry on.
I will watch it, that's my next thing on my list after interviewing you. So, Rebel of the Sands was your debut novel. How does it feel to have finished the trilogy?
You knew what I was going to do and you got in there with the question more quickly. It feels really good having finished a trilogy from a sort of personal satisfaction point of view, because I've talked about this before, so if you've seen me talk before, you've probably heard me say that I wrote 6 books before Rebel of the Sands that were they just weren't good enough. But they were all series starters in their own way. So by the time I wrote Rebel, I sort of knew I knew how to start a series, and then that came out. That was all that. But then I had to write a second book in a series, and I hadn't done that 6 times. So that was a new experience. So I knew I could write the beginning of a series, and I wasn't entirely sure I could write the continuation of a series, be that books 2 or 3. So I was really personally proud that I was able to, because it is a different beast, sort of being able to build on characters that are already existing and then wrap up everything that you've built. It's completely different than starting a series and introducing the characters, and everything sort of being fresh and shiny. You kind of have to build on what you've already done. And because she preempted me, I'm going to tell a story about Samantha now, which because she's embarrassed me by being so kind. This book, the other really satisfying thing is that people already know the story, so they're excited for it. And I was meeting Samantha in a cafe, and I was late or coming from somewhere else.
It was TMBR because hipsters.
Basically, and she'd been reading, she had an advanced copy of the book and she'd been reading it before I got there. And I got there and I was like, oh hi, we started chatting. My laptop was open because we were working. And an email popped up. It's sort of, the US woke up and I sent them a bunch of emails that morning, and an email popped up that I had to answer. I was like, oh, just give me 2 seconds. I've got to answer this email. Answer that email, and in the time that I'm doing that I looked away from her, she started reading the book again. And I finished that and I turned back and I was like, okay, I'm back, we can start talking again. Hi. hi, we can start working. And she didn't stop reading the book.
And which was like the worst thing ever when someone's reading your book in front of you.
It was hugely flattering, but I've never been so stressed out in my life. I imagine that this is what people who like care about sports feel like watching sports. It was sort of it was like the most exciting thing. I was like really happy and excited to see her reaction, but I was also really scared because at one point she cried, which is just depressing, watching your friend just cry and be like, there, I made you cry. And then at one point she just started going, nope, 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 nope. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's gonna hate how the book ends.
When at the end, I literally shut it. And didn't I say something like, shut up, I'm British, I have no emotions?
Yes, that is what happened. And I believe I may have that on film.
I'm not given to displays of emotion, Jenny.
Yeah, and then she didn't look at me and she was like, it was good, it was fine, whatever, let's go. And so yeah, so that was my experience of having sort of people read the end of a trilogy for the first time. So it was pretty intense. I think I've made, so far I have on record that I've made 3 people cry, at least. One of them was my dad, which is again worrying. And one of them was you, and then one of them was a friend who sent me a really upset, like, crying selfie from the other side of the world, and then I got told off by her boyfriend.
I can't tell if you're like, I literally can't tell if you're like relishing this or not, because I love it when people cry reading my stuff. Like I take like a sort of a tyrannical pleasure in it.
Yeah, it's satisfying. It's better than people being totally indifferent.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is, and bringing it back to your question, because I'm a pro, that is a very satisfying reaction to ending a series, that people are invested enough and care to cry when everyone dies. No, that's not true. Some people die.
Some people die. Some people I liked.
Yeah.
And I'm cross about it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Last night, someone told me that every picture that they took of me had me with my finger on my nose like this. So I'm trying really hard not to do that, because apparently that's one of my tics that I didn't know about until today.
It always ends up like somewhere up here when I'm just sitting there.
Yeah. Yeah, we do weird things, so apologies.
Yeah, we're nervous.
Yeah.
So this is the end of the trilogy, like you say. Does the finished trilogy look exactly the way you pictured it when you first set out to write it, or have there been major changes to your original vision? Because as we both know, books can change a hell of a lot. People don't know. It's like the whole sections can be ripped out, the whole structure changes.
I don't think the whole structure changed, because so essentially, originally when I started writing Rebel, I had a plan that was one book in my mind, that covered the whole of the rebellion. That started out where Rebel starts off, hit all the same beats. It's like, she starts off in Dustwalk, and then they run, and then there's crossing the desert, and then there's the Rebel camp, and then there'd be a bit in the city where everything happens as it happens in Traitor, and then the end of the rebellion would come, which happens in Hero, which I'm trying to be vague about now. And I, for some reason, thought that would all be contained in one book. And then I got to about 50,000 words, and they were still crossing the desert. I was like, no. So just to give you an idea, Rebel's not here, is it? Rebel's about 80,000. Traitor is somewhere over about 110, and then Hero is slightly shorter than that. So 50,000 words, that's basically half of a book, a normal book. So if I had been writing it as one book, it would have been hugely ridiculously long, like way longer than anyone would have had the patience to read. So I sort of had to rethink it and figure out where it could be cut into a series. But the ending is still the ending that it was going to be when it was going to be one book. That's always what I've been building towards. And the beat that's the end of Traitor was always going to be in the book in some way. I just for some reason thought it was only going to be in one book. So that's all the same. But there were some unexpected smaller things. For instance, several of the characters who, I'm talking so much about death, several of the characters who die in Hero I didn't know were going to die going into the book. And it was really actually quite surprised by it. There was I'm gonna be vague and say the last person who dies in it, I had so planned on them being alive at the end of the book that I sort of left them alive in it. I was sort of increasingly, as I wrote the book, I was sort of realizing, they're heading towards death. This storyline is heading towards death. But I just hadn't planned on it. So I wrote what was essentially a death scene, and then which cut to black, and then later on, they're still alive, and then they're just like, sorry, what is this? I was 100% sure that this person was dead. That was what was clearly implied in that scene. I was like, I know, I just wanted them alive for one more draft. I'm really sorry. I know that they have to die, so they died in the edits of the book because I just hadn't planned on it. So that kind of caught me off guard and I resisted it. But it's little things like that. The big pillars are roughly the same, I would say. Yeah.
You mentioned like 50,000 words in, they were still walking across the desert. I think one thing you do fantastically is you make journeying scenes really interesting because there is such a risk in fantasy, like they're still riding a horse. And they're still riding a horse.
Yeah. And we can't do like a Lord of the Rings movie where it just like cuts to beautiful landscapes of New Zealand with epic music.
When you're trying to write that, it's just hell. So do you
ever just want to like write the word montage and then move on with your life?
Genuinely in drafts, I often just write like battle
so
scene,
great.
montage, journey scene.
Yeah.
So do you actually enjoy writing the journey scenes, or do you find them challenging, or?
In Rebel, they made a lot of sense because the one point where I got really stuck with Amani's story in Rebel was when she got to the Rebel camp, and I just couldn't realize why I was stuck for so long. This was sort of when I was first drafting it, and I realized that it was the first time in the story that she wasn't physically moving forward somewhere, that she wasn't physically trying to get from point A to point B. She was staying in one place, which is very unnatural for a character who is so kind of like, what's that over there? And then gone before before anyone has the chance to say anything.
Classic, distracted by shiny things.
Oh, completely. I always say that like when I don't know what should happen next, I just follow her, and it's the first thing that I would think of, because she's the sort of person that if she asked for directions and you were like, well, you can take this really dangerous path through this haunted forest, or there's like a train over there. She like, by the time you mention the train, she's halfway into the forest of haunted ghosts. Haunted ghosts? Is that a thing? That's totally a thing. So it actually, the sort of journeying made a lot of sense because it was a forward progression physically that sort of matched the forward progression in her emotional arc as well. And then when she became static, I just didn't know what to do. So I think that's probably why journeying sort of makes a bit of sense in the book, because they're moving. She's sort of always in motion.
Yeah, I think actually the US cover of Hero really kind of exemplifies the Amani, because it looks like she's just leaping from nowhere into space. Where is she jumping from? You just don't know. She looks great.
And where is she jumping to? Like, it does not look like there's a soft landing to it.
It's like she's so high in the air.
Yeah, no, I love that.
But it really does exemplify her character.
Yeah, it's
very
just
much look before you leap. No,
leap before you look. Yes, no, completely.
Yeah. Okay, so as well as journeying, to me, Hero felt quite a lot bigger than its predecessors in terms of geography. We actually go back to a few places. That's a spoiler, kind of, maybe. Sorry. But we go back to a few places, and we go to a lot of places we haven't seen before. That's very different from the structure of Traitor to the Throne, which was this very kind of claustrophobic, palatial environment. Which one did you prefer, I guess, is what I'm asking. Like, do you like getting Amani out into the world? I mean, like you said, it's quite unnatural to have her being really still, and in the harem she was trapped the whole time. I mean, did that let you explore a different aspect of her character?
Yeah, I mean, from a practical point of view, it was nice to settle into a place a little bit in Traitor, because there had been so much movement in Rebel, so it was nice to sort of settle into somewhere, because every time that you arrive somewhere new, obviously you have to be like, they've been walking for 2 days and this is where they are now, and just like, everyone with me? Okay, cool, like make sure that you know where she is, whereas in Traitor's like, she's in the palace, she's still in the palace, day 20 and she's still in the Big Brother house, palace. So it's kind of, it kind of allows you to focus on other things a little bit. But the trapped thing is something that she very much is before Rebel starts, but that you don't get much of a chance to see, because she's sort of trapped before she leaves in Rebel, and then trapped again in Traitor, so it's sort of a familiar feeling. But I think in that way it was interesting to sort of get to do a different kind of movement forward of that was a lot more internal and a lot more sort of subterfuge, and her solution to everything couldn't be stab it, shoot it with a gun. It had to be like a little bit more subtle, because I think if it was 3 books of Amani shooting at things, everyone would get a little bit bored. So, including me, there's 3 books of shooting. No, I think that's called an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
I think Amani would do great in an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
Yeah, fair enough.
The other thing, as well as the geography, is the mythology of it feels a lot deeper in this one. You know, we get to go back into the really rich history of the world, for example. When did you choose kind of when to branch off into your own mythology versus the Middle Eastern stories that obviously helped inspire it, like the rocks, for example, are obviously from that. So when did you feel like you could branch away from the mythology, and when did you feel like you should be faithful to it? Did you have like a particular system for doing that?
I think the thing you find with any mythological sort of creature or whatever is that it's very different no matter what version, depending on what version you read. I mean, you can read about 85 different versions of fairies, for instance, to use something Western. There's, you know, the good fairies, the evil fairies, the cute fairies, the tooth fairy, you know, all those sorts of things. And so you can kind of pick and choose to a certain extent as it is convenient, and it's really the same for, to pick an example, the genie, where if you read sort of folk tales from that part of the world, and it's also, the other thing is that it's very vague. What we refer to as the Middle East is really sort of vaguely defined, and borders as they are now are not borders as they were then. So Iran is roughly Persia, but it's not really, and that kind of incorporates this part and things like that. So it's kind of, so the Arabian Peninsula has different stories than Iran, has different stories than, you know, whatever other thing that used to be another country. So some of them, you know, for instance, for the genie, they are supernatural creatures that come out of a locked chest and are like, I'm going to kill you because I'm so mad that I was locked in that chest for 25 years. Or some of them, it's like, thank you for freeing me. I'm going to grant you a wish, as we all know from Aladdin. And then some of them is just like they live a daily life, and it's not made a big deal of like, this dude's dad was a genie, and sometimes when he was in trouble, you know, he just rubbed a magic ring and his dad came and bailed him out of, you know, a sand pit on his adventure or whatever it might be. So it kind of could pick and choose a little bit, and you realize there is no set canon because it is not real. Sorry. Sorry, everyone knew fairies weren't real, right? Okay, cool. And then some of it is inspired from things that are a little bit more Western, like the aversion to iron, which is something very Catholic because it's sort of a lot of it is iron on the cross and things like that. And then some of it is a little bit Greek, with the whole sort of like the Greek gods and their demigod children who have superpowers. That's sort of where the Denji come from. So it's a little bit of a as it's convenient to the story mishmash in a way.
So is there no Denji equivalent in the...
They're not really made a big deal of. It's just like he's a dude, and sometimes he has a supernatural parent who will come to his aid in a Deus Ex Machina way. But they don't often have like exceptional powers in the same way that Hercules has exceptional powers because he's the son of Zeus. So it's kind of like they live normal lives. It's sort of just this it's almost a spirit world in some ways. So, no,
you do a really good job of combining that into like a seamless kind of mythology. On that topic, what kind of research did you do in general for this book? So I know that you spoke to an expert in ships.
So there's any aspiring writers, I don't recommend doing this, and I never thought that I would do it. Because I remember when I was on tour the very first time, Rachel Hawkins, who writes the Rebel Belle series, told me that when she handed in the first Rebel Belle book, the final scene, which if you read it now is this epic fight scene between all these like Buffy-esque girls and forces of evil, she handed in her book with a sort of thing being, epic fight scene here, imagine it to Bad Girls by MIA, to her editor, and then she's like, I'll write it later. And that's essentially what she handed in, and I was like, that's allowed, but I guess she has like 6 books by now, so I'm like, sure, it's fine, she knows what she's doing, but I can't imagine ever doing that. And then I handed in the first draft of Hero, and it was a choice between handing it in on time with something missing or not handing it on time with a really poorly written scene in it, both of which didn't seem great. So I picked the lesser of two evils, and I handed it in. And so there was this scene in it where a conversation just cut off in the middle, and then I put in brackets, so they're gonna steal a ship here, so don't be confused, the next chapter starts on a ship. Cool, okay, bye. And then I just started the next chapter on a ship, because I just had no concept of how one steals a ship. I just didn't know. So I spoke to someone who is literally, he's a pirate expert, that's what he does.
Isn't that the best job?
I know. I don't know why my mother knows pirate experts, but she does. She put me in touch. And I believe, do you guys, what was that terrible movie with the woman who was in who was in There's No Crying. Oh my god, I can't remember the name of anything. There's no Gina Davis. Gina Davis. She did a terrible pirate movie.
Cutthroat Island.
Thank you. Cutthroat Island. Don't watch it, except do, because it's awful. And he was fired from that movie for trying to make it like accurate, for telling them things that you can't do, like you can't sail a ship directly into a storm, and like things like that. Again, I don't know if that's accurate.
Can you not do that because every single pirate show?
Apparently you can't. And apparently the wind goes the wrong way. I don't know. I don't know. Why are you looking at me? I once sank a sailboat in a lake. Jeez. That's true. That was not great. But so I spoke to him, and basically what I was convinced of was that they couldn't steal a pirate ship, it's not even a pirate ship, a ship, with the number of people they had, because he's like, well, you would need, depending on what kind of ship it is, you would need a minimum of 12 people who knew how to sail. And I was like, so I have 2.
Yeah.
And there's definitely more people here that I need to fit on the ship for it to be a small enough ship that can be sailed by 2 people. So I had to completely just abandon that scene. So it was one of those things where research helped me in just knowing that I didn't know enough to do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Ships are bloody complicated though, writing about them. There is so much to do and so many roles, and it's like an entire, like you need a degree in world building just to write about a ship.
There's so many ropes. There's so many, I had to Google repeatedly just to remember which one was the front, which one was the back, stern and bow. I just was like, every single time I was like, oh, which one's which? And they're not even on there for that long, and then it took up so much of my time.
And then they have their own slang, like sailor slang and stuff. Anyway, I'm going to move away from world.
Sorry.
Let's talk about Amani. So something I've always found really interesting about her as a character is that she is essentially a supporting character in somebody else's story. She's not a Katniss where she's the centre of the revolution. She is a kind of a legend in her own right because she becomes the blue-eyed bandit, but for the whole thing that she has been supporting Amit's claim to the throne, which is really interesting, and I think it makes the series really unique. But did it ever feel kind of challenging to write that, kind of her not being the centre of the revolution, but rather being Amit's support?
Yeah, I think it made more sense for her to be supporting initially for what her internal character development is, because it was really important for me that the rebellion seemed fully fleshed out, and the air conditioners just come on. I was like, what's happening? That it'd be fully fleshed out. So essentially, every character who is in the rebellion is the protagonist of their own story. If I wanted to, I could go away and be like, this is what happened from their point of view. This is what happened from their point of view.
As indeed you do in the little short story collection that all of you have in your tote bags.
Yes. And not every character is in there. Sorry, manage your expectations. So it was really important that it feel fully realized when she came into it, because it's an important part of her story, her personal storyline, that she goes from being a very selfish person who's very much out for herself and completely for survival to someone who learns to work as part of a team and learns to sort of look out for other people and care about other people, and that her success is part can work towards the good of the country. So I think it would have been, it would have taken minimum until book 3 for Rebellion to start if she had been the spark of the revolution, to go back to the Hunger Games. And because she's just really not in a capacity to lead until book 3, and even then it's shaky. So I sort of wanted her story to be one of coming into this larger cause rather than her starting this larger cause and her being the center of everything.
Speaking of the cause, which is your favourite of her rebel friends?
Shazad. Sorry, but I answered that so way too quickly.
No, seriously, I'm obsessed with Shazad. I'm married to Shazad. Where exactly did Shazad come from? Tell us all about Shazad. Everything about Shazad. Every single thing.
Shazad was a baby when she was born. No, not everything. I really wanted. It was really important to me that Amani not be the only female character in the rebellion, that she not be a complete boys club, and it was really important to me that she have a female friend, which I realized as I was writing it, because in a very early sort of draft, when it wasn't even really Rebel, when I was sort of writing snippets and things like that, they had a sort of I think it's because I'm so ingrained with just society, they sort of had a semi-antagonistic relationship very early on. This was before it was a real book, because she'd spent so long getting to know Jin as they cross the desert that she comes into this environment where everyone knows him way better than her, and so there was an element in my mind. I was like, okay, there'd be an element of jealousy there, of like, I thought I knew him, but he's better friends with you, and
And also, she's a newcomer to the rebellion.
Yeah, exactly.
It's scary for Shazak. She's like, a newcomer is kind of a threat.
Yeah, exactly. And so that sort of that's how I started to write it. And then I just thought, oh god, it's so boring to have girls just be competitive and bitchy to each other over a boy, even if it's not romantic. This is so boring. So it just ended up clicking way more when their relationship was Amani walking in and Shazad being like, I'm a competent female, you're a competent female, do you want to be competent females together? And then being like, okay, I guess I'm just being like decided that I'm this person's friend now. So that was important. It's also really important that Shazad sort of represent what Amani could be if she hadn't had such a sucky upbringing, because they're both in this position of they've never thought less of themselves in spite of what society has told them, except that Shazad has come from a background that has supported her in this, and she's gone off and sort of become the right-hand woman to a revolution, and Amani has gone a different direction, which is like, I'm not lesser, so I'm going to take care of myself and push anyone out of the way who believes that I am, and kind of brings her around a little bit.
So you write like kind of little, I don't know what to call them, like vignettes maybe, for each of the characters kind of throughout the story. So obviously we're in Amani's head, but then we get these sort of stories told to us about the other characters, which is a lovely way of kind of getting to know them. There's also a really heavy emphasis on the importance of storytelling in Hero. Like Amani and Ahmad are kind of becoming characters in their own world, like the Blue-Eyed Bandit, the Rebel Prince, they all have these kind of little sobriquets. What do you think the importance of storytelling is in kind of revolutions in general? Like, did you have a particular message you wanted to send about that in these books?
I think a lot of any conflict or war is the story that you tell about it. Because I spoke about this a little bit when Traitor came out, so apologies if you've already heard me say this. But Traitor to the Throne is called Traitor to the Throne because essentially a rebellion isn't decided of how it went until history decides it and stories decide it. So if you were successful in a rebellion, that's great. You're a hero, you changed the world, you set up a government, you whatever it was. If you weren't successful, best case scenario, you are remembered as having been an idealist who died a martyr's death. Worst case scenario, remembered as a terrorist who tried to take down your government. So I think a lot of it is, a lot of the sort of storytelling aspect is about the narrativizing of this rebellion, and from their point of view in the sort of within the world, they are these larger than life figures who can change the country. He's not just Ahmed, he's the Rebel Prince. She's not just Amani, she's the Blue-Eyed Bandit. She can be everywhere at once. She can shoot you from a mile away, like all these things that are larger than life, because these are the people who could actually change the world. Whereas they're just very flawed teenagers trying to do their best and blow things up along the way. So I think that's a big part of it, is the narrativization of the story that gets told, and that's a huge thing that makes people decide to follow you, because you're a larger than life figure in a revolution, because no one's going to follow some dude who's like, hey, wouldn't this be a good idea? And someone who stands at a table and is like, I am this person, I'm the second coming of blah, 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 and we are going to change the world. So that was kind of the idea there.
No, absolutely. One last question from me. Now that this trilogy is wrapped up, what's next for you?
Okay, I'm looking at someone who's shaking their head vigorously at me. And everyone's now going to turn and stare at her.
Very vaguely.
Okay, I can tell you it's still YA. I am working on something new. It's still YA. It's still fantasy. If you look at the things that I have been tweeting recently from my Pinterest, you can probably figure out quite a lot of things that I'm not allowed to say. That's what I'm going to go with.
Okay,
is that okay?
I will not bully you anymore into revealing information.
Come talk to me later. I'll tell you. No, joking.
Yes, I'm now going to open it up to you guys for questions.
Do I have bags?
Do you have bags?
Do I? I have red, someone's pointing at me. I have red, you all have those tote bags, but I have a few red tote bags to give out, shiny red tote bags to give out to questions, to make you ask questions, to bully you into it. There we go. See, that totally worked. I saw your head go up first.
I'm just wondering, due to the success of your fantastic trilogy, is there been any kind of film interest coming up, or kind of like?
So the question, just so everyone heard it, is has there been film interest? There has. It's been announced, but nothing for a while. It's been acquired by Willow Smith, who's Will Smith's daughter's production company, because we all had production companies when we were 18. And as far as I know, they are working on it, but I don't know what that means because I don't understand anything in the movie making process, and they have not asked me about it. So keep your fingers crossed, and we'll see. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Who should I pick? Right there in the middle. Yes.
How much input did you have on the cover design?
How much input did I have on the cover design? Thankfully for the covers, very little. No, if I had really hated the covers, I absolutely would have said something, but fortunately I really loved everything that I've been shown. So my comments were like, the T could be a millimeter smaller, I don't know what to say, you know what I mean? But no, it was done by very talented people who actually know what they're doing, unlike me. Because if you left it up to me, I was like, here's a stick drawing what I made. See if she has sand. Like, it would have been awful. So I'm really glad that other people were in charge of it. The person who made the covers is, in the UK is named Will Steele, which is a superhero name, which I'm really excited about. Yes, you.
Did you decide on what was the decision on the names, and did you choose the names yourself, or did you kind of have help with that?
The names of the books.
Yeah.
I absolutely had help. I'm really bad at titles. I think at one point I might have suggested calling the first book The Sand and the Fury, which someone got to before me. The name of the first one changed a few times. I submitted it as Creatures of Smokeless Fire. We went out to editors as More Gunpowder Than Girl, and then it had a bunch of different titles before we landed on Rebel the Sands. And then Traitor to the Throne was also really hard to come up with because we were all really stuck on the Awtft for a really long time. We sort of all had a sense that it should be Traitor, but it was Traitor. We kept going like Traitor of the Palace, Traitor of the, Traitor of the Kingdom. That was not a kingdom. Like it was very difficult. And then someone geniusly suggested, why don't we change of to two? And it opened a whole new world of titles, which was great. And then we similarly had a very long conversation about the title of the third one because we knew similarly there was a sense that it should be Hero, but we didn't have the middle words yet. So, and I was on tour when it was being discussed and sort of saying like, hero of the desert, we couldn't quite get there. And Renee Attier, who wrote The Wrath and Dawn, was with me, and she was like, what about Hero of the Fall? And I was like, oh, I like that, and I emailed, and I got nixed on it. And then we went for a really long time on conversations, and then I think someone said at one point, because there's a line in the book that's something like enemy at the walls, or enemy at the gates, or something, and someone said, what about Hero at the wall? I think. I'm trying to remember, this was after like months. At this point, if someone had been like, Hero of the Couch, I would have been like, yeah, that's fine. I just want to lie down. And it was, and then someone was like, what about Hero at the Fall? And I was like, oh my god, I said that 6 months ago. Why do I have 18 emails about this? But we got there. But I am really the worst at titles. Like the folder on my laptop, which contains all of these books, is still called Wild West Arabian Nights Story. I still haven't retitled it. The thing that I'm currently reading, and this is not a spoiler, is just called Witches. There are no witches in it. But it was like, I just couldn't think of a word of a person with magic except for that. So that's why I titled the folder, and I still haven't retitled it. Because I still don't have a title for that book either. So, yes, titles, sorry, that was a ramble. Yes.
Okay, so two things. Names for the characters, how did you come up with them?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, you're not asking the second one now.
And would you consider writing like a short story prequel about Shazad?
Ooh, okay, so names of the characters, how did I come up with them? A lot of different ways, a lot of them have meanings. Amani's name literally means wishes, which is very relevant for many reasons. Shazad's name is deliberately, traditionally, a boy's name with different spelling because she occupies a traditional male role and because it is reminiscent of the Scheherazade name of the 1001 Nights. Ahmed is the name of a lot of different rulers of the Ottoman Empire. Jin's name was because I was thinking about Treasure Island, and his name is Jim, and I just changed a letter. And I wish there was a better reason behind that. And also I needed his name to sort of be both a sort of typically East Asian name and also fit into a typically more, again, I hate using sort of Middle Eastern name. So a lot of different reasons. I'm trying to think of anyone else who's in the books. Sam's name was because I was cycling through people who I needed like a really, I don't want to say generic English name, but like a normal English name, sorry. And I was just cycling through all the names and I was like, Jack, no. I know one. Tom, that's my dad. No, John, I know too many of them. I was like, I don't know why sort of Sam came out.
I like to imagine he's named after me.
I don't think I knew you properly when I was writing Trader. Okay, he's named after Samantha.
He's English.
Yes.
He has blue eyes. There you go.
There you go. It's her. So yeah, lots of different meanings. And then whatever, there is sort of a semi-short story about Shahzad in Hero, kind of referencing her backstory. I have written a lot of sort of, sometimes when I have trouble getting started writing, I'll write like a short story of a backstory, and I have written a few for her, but they always wind up being a little bit longer than I mean, and I think it's like threatening to spiral out into something that's not, I don't think it would be a novel, but I don't think it would be like a snippet
None
either.
of us would mind.
Well, I think here's the problem with writing a short, like a full novel about Shahzad, is that she's far too sensible. It'd be like, I had a problem and then I fixed it. Because I'm a badass. Whereas like Amani's like, I have a problem and I'm gonna make it bigger by blowing something up, and that is sort of what you need to write a book. And also, I think it's very hard having a character who is considerably smarter than you are, which she is considerably smarter than I am. So it's always much easier for her to turn up in a scene and be like, I've devised this plan, and it's from Amani's point of view, rather than her turn up in a scene and and be like, we have to work through how the plan would actually work and how she came up with it and all these things, because I just can't. I'm not there with her. Do we have time?
Yeah,
yes, we have time. Yes.
So this is both of my question.
Yeah.
But, going back to the idea of there being like a film or something, who would you want to like play the characters?
Who would I want to play the characters in a film version? It's always very hard to say, because it's an unfortunate fact that there are very few prominent actors who are not white, who are young, especially in the US. A friend of mine, and I haven't watched it yet, but apparently there is a Norwegian series called Scam that a lot of people are obsessed with. Yeah, there we go. And there is a girl in that who I have been told would be excellent for several roles. I am willing to fight Renee Ahdieh for Yara Shahidi, who is the daughter from Blackish. But I think she would be a good Shahzad. And then I was looking at, there's a movie coming out later this year called Crazy Rich Asians, which I was looking at the cast list for because someone texted me about the book of it. And I was just like selecting, being like, Jin? No, that would be Jin. No, that would be Jin. So look at that cast list and tell me who you think the best Jin would be from that cast. Do we have one more, I'm being told. Yes, I'm right at the back, yeah. Yes?
Of the 6 stories you worked through previously, are there any that you would consider taking further?
Of the 6 stories that I wrote previously, are there any that I would consider taking further? I think there is one that is fixable, which is the one that I wrote immediately before Rebel, because it was the first sort of proper, full fantasy that I wrote. That I sort of had the guts to like fully invest in writing a fantasy, because it's quite intimidating. I think I was intimidated by it before. As I was writing, I could sort of feel that it was almost the right book, and it was almost there. But there was something about it that wasn't right. And at one point I just thought, I'm gonna take a break from this, and I'm gonna write this, just 20 minutes of this other idea that I have, just to get it out of my system. And I wrote the first chapter of Rebel, and then I never went back to that other book. But what I think has happened is that by writing Rebel, Trader, and Hero, I've learned enough that I would now be able to fix that book, which I wouldn't have been able to 4 years ago or 5 years ago, or whatever that was. So I would consider going back to that one. and fixing it, but it would be almost a complete rewrite. I don't think there's very much. There'd be maybe a couple of descriptions that would be salvageable from that, and maybe not even that. So coming in 2025, the book I wrote in 2010. So we'll see. And I think I'm being told that we're out of time, unfortunately. But if you have any burning questions, you can ask me later.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much to everyone for coming out tonight. Let's give Alwyn a big congratulations.